This is Gemara Pesachim Daf Ayin Dalit. Tonight's year should be a special schos for Shleim of Chaim Yitzchak Moshe ben Esther Rizal. We should hear great news and you should have a complete recovery. Of course, all other Chaylim Chaim Yitzchak ben Magid Meir ben Ikir Ben Ben Vega Mechel Sipar Nesatei Liu V'Chaim Ben Slar Shalom Sipar Rizal Slar Basinan Basim Chai Say yourself immediately the Pretim Shavalei Shemos with Nomi Shabashivir Ben Shirchana. Fall David need to do Shmuel Ben Tila Dinim Ben Chana Rizal Malkal Chaya Basmin Librach was Tavia Musa. B'Say Sha'ar Chayli Yisrael. We pick it up in the bottom of Ayin Gimel and Beis, the second wide line as we work on concluding the sixth parak and beginning the second parak, the seventh parak. Basically, just to get everyone back into things, we had a stira, we had a contradiction between the way that we are learning our Mishnah and the way that Rav Huna Marav said a random din, not random, but said a different din about an asham. There was a din that there was a carbon asham that either the owner died or the owner already got his kapara. What do you have to do? You have to take the carbon, put it out the pasture, and then you have to shecht it. Then you have to shech that animal. Then once it gets a mum, you shech it. You sell the proceeds to take the money to give it the Beis Hamikdash, and then you buy a carbon oil as a keith, as a dessert for the mizbeach. The question was, what happens if you go and you shech an animal before it gets a mum? So Rav taught us that it's kosher la'ila, and from there we saw a concept that loy bayi akira, that an animal, a carbon, could transfer sanctity from an asham to naila on its own. We had a steer from that to our Mishnah, because our Mishnah said a case where someone shechted a carbon and a Pesach and then realized, all the Bailim jumped ship on me. I have no more Bailim left. And the Bryce on the very top of this Amanai in Gimel Al Beis explained that Bechol, if that happened during the week, our Mishnah spoke about Hamdan Shabbos, if it's called being over and it's deraisa from the fact that you shechted and it wasn't a kosher shchit. But what happens if it's during the week? Said the Bryce, Yisarif miyad. You burnt it right away. From there, the Gemara asked, that doesn't fit with the Shita of Rav Huna Marav that holds that loy bayi akira. Because if it was loy bayi akira, you shouldn't be yisarif miyad. Rather, you should have to wait for it to get a mum. The only time would be Yisarif Miyad if it's Bayi Akira, meaning it's a Karban Pesach. It's a Karban Pesach with no Bailim. Karban Pesach with no Bailim, the din would be Yisarif Miyad. But according to Rav Huna Amarav, that it's not a Karban Pesach with no Bailim. What is it? A Karban Pesach automatically right away should morph into Ashlamim. If it morphs into Ashlamim, what's the halach of Ashlamim that has a psul? You should have to lose it. You should have to be Uba Tzura, let it lose its form, and then you'd go and burn it. We've had multiple attempts so far try to answer this question. We concluded yesterday, actually maybe we'll go back a few lines just because that's really going to be the final teretz of Ela Tirgma. Let's pick up from there 3 lines before the wide lines. Ela Tirgma, Rav Yosef Brei de Rav, Salah Chazida Kamid Rav Pap, Ha'amani Yosef ben Chanai. This is going to be the final. This is going to be the final teretz that the Gemara is going to stick with it. Now we learned in the Mishnah, Yosef ben Chanai Yomer Neshchatim l'Shem Pesach u'L'Shem Chatos. It's psulim. Alma, what do we see? You have a dual kavana. What do we see? Psula begufo. It's an intrinsic psul. Shamachi yisarf miyad. So we're explaining that the case in the Mishnah that when you shechted and you realize that you have no more bailim, that's a case that you shechted l'Shem Pesach u'L'Shem Chatos. That's why it's an intrinsic psul, and that's going to be the reason why you burn it right away, but that's not going to be a contradiction to the sheet of Rav Huna Marav from the case of the Asham. But however, Ubebeturi, with regard to being over an Issa Darais of Chol Shabbos, Savlik Rav Yeshua, who holds Tayyib B'Dvar Mitzvah, is going to be Potter. That is going to be the final teretz, that again, the way we're explaining the Mishnah is going to run to Rav Yosef ben Chunai, Yosef ben Chunai, and it's not a stira to Rav Yehuda Amarav. The Gemara tries one last attempt in answering the stira of Ashi Amarav, Rav Ashi Amarav, the Amar Rav Yishmael ben Yishal B'Rechanam ben Broika. He's going to Pinir Yishal ben Yishal Broika. The time we went to the Reisa. Rav Yishmael ben Yishal ben Broika Omer Im Yishos b'Yom Leida Im Mashcha B'Ilem Esidei Im Oisha Mesu. If there's time in the day before when you did the Shechita of the Karban Pesach, and you could have found out, are there Bailim? Did the owners die? Oisha Nitbu, did they become Tam? Then the halach is chayiv, and you didn't find out, then you're chayiv. It's called being over malacha and Shabbos. V'tu ubar suras, you have to let it lose its form, and then you burn it. My time, what's the reason this is the halacha? Lam yisham d'loi bayakira. Seemingly, this corroborates the din of Rav Yehuda Marav. It doesn't need Akira, and that's the reason why what it's going to retain its status, and that's why it has to be Uber Surasa and then go to Beisa Serefa. Mimai, says Gemara, how do you know that? Meaning, and therefore the Gemara wants to suggest that Rav Yehuda Marav holds like Rav Yishmael ben Oisham Reichem and Breika. Gemara now says 5 lines to the bottom. Mimai, tell me Sham Desavarla Kitana Devi Rabbi Ravua. Maybe he holds like Tana Devi Rabbi Ravua that what the Amar that he holds Afilu Pigel Nami by Iber Tzura, a different shita. We've been going the whole time from the top of the Amid that generally generally you don't need Iber Tzura. Generally, if it's an intrinsic soul, then what's the halacha? Yisariv miyad. However, Rabbi Ravu disagrees. He holds even Pegel, which is a chiddush, because it's not intrinsic soul generally, and yet he holds it needs Iber Tzura. Why? Yes, exeres like Kassav, that he holds you never go and burn it right away. You always have to wait for it to lose its form. So maybe that's the reason why over here, if you're going to tell me that Nitzma Bailam, the case of the Bailam become Tameh, Michael and Meimar, Havade Bayakira. In that case, you certainly need to uproot and remove the carbon from its current status. Why? Damar Achia Bar Gamda. Nizko Bia Chabura Ganjay Bailam Tameh Mesim. The owners are Tameh, Vinitzchol Pesach Sheni, and therefore you for sure have to change the carbon from a Pesach to Ashlamim. So therefore, says the Gemara, it's not clear, not proven to say the Rav Rav is going to Shita Vishal Ben Shemrich Ben Broika Ella Machavarti Kashina Meikara Yosef Ben Chunayi. And therefore, at the end of the day, we had a steer between Rav Yudah Rav who says Loi Akira, which means again that a carbon automatically, as soon as it's not fit for one carbon, the asham right away, what's it going to change into? Boom! Automatically, it's going to change into an ayla without any thought, without any cognizant das. Loi Akira. That's not a contradiction to our Mishnah, and our Mishnah says what's the reason? Because we're going to opinion of Yosef ben Chunai, that he holds that when you have this dual kavana, it's called an intrinsic soul, and that's why you have to be Yisarif miyad. Hadron alach ilu dvarim, we shall return. Let's try to do a wonderful chazara. These prakim are not easy. The 6th parak of Pesachim, the 2nd of all the halachas of Kachim, of Karban Pesach, and Amir Hashem, we should continue learning many, many more prakim together. Let's quickly start and continue into the 7th parak Kitzat Toilin, a parak that's going to continue dealing with the halachas of the Karban Pesach, but deal primarily, which as you see from the name of the parak, Kitzad Soilin, it's going to deal with the halachas of tzli, of how you roast the Karban Pesach. And just before we start the Mishnah, let's take 1 second to see the pasuk in the Torah. Money on the side of the Gemara, if you look at the screen, you'll see the pasuk in Shemaisi Beis Ches that says, "V'achlu es habasar b'leila hazeh." You eat the flesh of this night. Tzli eish has to be roasted. U'matzal mayrim yoichlu. This is the makar that any time the way to prepare the Karban Pesach was how tzli eish had to be roasted. What's the reason? The general reason is because that's the way of malchus, that's the way of kingship, because that's a very fancy way of eating your food, and we know that Leil Seder, there was Mamlechas Kayanim, the nation was created, therefore you have to eat it, Vitzli Ish. Says the Mishnah, Kitzad Soilin Es HaPesach, how do you roast the Karban Pesach? Mevi'in Shvod Shel Rimain, you bring a stick of wood of a Rimain, a pomegranate tree, and you stick it from the mouth all the way out the back end of the animal. And we'll actually, as I mentioned in the email, we'll be showing some nice pictures of this. If anyone wants, please reach out. I'll happily share the link with you. These are Kol pictures, beautiful pictures. And you take the limbs and the innards, and you take them out of the animal, but then you put it back into the animal, and then you roast it that way. So you're going to take the animal, take the steak, we'll show pictures and we'll explain that. Rav Akiva disagrees. What's bishul? Bishul is when you cook something like in a pot. You pick something, you put it in a pot, you put it in a fire. That's a form of bishul, a form of cooking. So says Rav Akiva, if you take the innards and you put it in the animal, and then you put that over a fire, essentially that's a form of cooking, says Rav Akiva, because the innards are going to be cooked through the moisture that comes out. Therefore, he says it's a form of bishul, and therefore he disagrees, and he says, you take the inners, and it would take all the different parts, and you hang it outside the animal. And that's part number 1 of the Mishnah. Part number 2, you cannot roast the Karban Pesach on a shvud or a sachla. We're going to see in the Gemara exactly what that is. He told his servant, go roast us Karban Pesach al sachla, on the sachla, which obviously the Mishnah is a bit difficult to read, because first it says don't do it. It sounds like Rav Tzadok said that Rav Gamliel did do that, and we'll see in the Gemara exactly what's going on over there. So here we have it. This is your shvut shel rimain. This is your pomegranate tree. This was the type of stick they used to roast the Karban Pesach. And here we have a beautiful picture of them taking the stick, as you see, he's putting it right through the mouth of the animal. And as you see over here, it starts to the mouth on the left side of your screen, and it comes out the bottom on the right side of your screen. This is the first opinion in the Mishnah. Clearly, as you see, all the innards are inside the animal, as you see in this close-up, a big gory. I apologize if anyone can't handle this. That all the innards are inside the animal. This is your craw, these are your hooves. And these are the innards, the B'nai Me'ayev. And then here is the second opinion in the Mishnah. This is Rav Akiva. That you see, according to Rav Akiva, he did not hold that you put them inside the animal. He held that you put them on top of the animal, outside the animal, because he held that if it would be inside the animal, it would be a form of bishul. Here you see them holding up the whole carbon with them hanging on the bottom over there. Those are all the innards, etc. Here's a nice close-up as they stacked it up. This is according to the sheet of Rashi, and this is going to be the Gemara. Says the Gemara, it's basically most of the pictures for today. Hopefully now we have a bit more of a flavor, a bit more of a feeling of what we're talking about, and with that we can go smoothly into the Gemara. Says the Gemara, why are you taking a wooden stick? Take a metal stick. Says the Gemara, you know why? Important, Yisoid. Metal, what happens with metal? When a part of metal becomes hot, the whole metal becomes hot. And then it's going to be roasted partially due to the stick. Meaning, the real fire roasted is all due to the fire 100%. So if it's a wooden stick, the wooden stick doesn't get hot. So when you have this big carbon like you just saw over the fire in the wooden stick, what's going to happen? It's going to be cooking from the fire. But if it's on a metal stick, the metal itself is going to get hot. And then therefore the metal will be contributing to the bishul, and it won't be a real and a full tzli eish. V'rachmana amar tzli eish. V'loi tzli machmas tavrachar. It can be roasted with the aid of something else. And that's the reason why you cannot use a metal stick. Says the Gemara, fine. Why don't we bring a decal tree? Says the Gemara, I did this shivi, since there are these, it's hollow, this type of stick, mapik maya, the stick itself is going to collect water, and then vavikimavushal, and it's going to be a form of bishul. Again, the stick itself is going to collect some moisture inside it, and that moisture is going to heat it up, and that's a form of cooking. Says the Gemara, take of a date tree, fig tree, similarly, since it has, machalchel is that it's hollow. The previous one was that there were cracks. Since it's machalchel, therefore, so Rashi says in the previous one, was that there were lines inside, it catches the water. This is machalchel, that it's hollow, it catches the water. And again, v'avleikim alone. Why don't you bring of an oak tree, shalcharov, of a carrot tree? Says Gemara, I did this by kitri, since there are knots in the wood, again, mapik maya collects water, and therefore it'll be a form of bishul. Shall rimay nami, says Gemara, it's like kitri, also has knots. She kitri, says the Gemara, is smooth knots, and therefore we're not afraid it's going to collect any water. V'bay sema, Benigna, Barshasad, Lesbe Kitri, or we're talking about a certain tree of a 1-year-old, that type of remind tree, which doesn't have knots in it. Says the Gemara, Vayika Be Piskaya, Demapik, we have that the part where you cut off the tree, the part where you cut off, always at the end, is going to be a bit hollow over here. So on that part, the Ika Be Piskaya, the part where you cut it off, are we afraid it's going to collect some water in there? Says the Gemara, is that you take that part and you stick it outward, and therefore we're not afraid that the water is going to go in. And that's going to be a constant idea we're going to keep on seeing, is whenever there's going to be concern of water, we'll see in a moment about the blood, we'll always say, okay, so just turn it the other way and make it flow outwards. Says the Gemara, fine. So that's all about the type of tree. Now we understand why we're using a remind tree, because we don't want it to collect any water in the cracks, in the holes, in the hollow, in its end, and therefore it'll be a real form of sli ish, of roasting on the fire. Says the Gemara, like Rav Yehuda, the Mishnah like Rav Yehuda, Tan Rav Yehuda Himer, Shem Sheshvishal Eit in an Israf. He held that a metal stick, it does not boil. Amruloi. So our Mishnah disagrees, and they explain Amruloi, the Chum, says Rav Yehuda, Zecham Miksasai. Cham kulai v'zecham miksasai ein cham kulai, and that's really the understanding of the difference between the remind, the pomegranate wood, and the metal wood. Is that the metal wood cham miksasai, which is a big actual rule in Yeridea, is that when part of something becomes hot, we assume the entire thing comes hot. Whereas when it's a wooden item, we don't assume that, and therefore our Mishnah says, what's the way that you're supposed to roast the Karban Pesach is over a wooden remind stick. Says the Gemara B'nai Sinais Karov, you take the innards and you stick it inside, sticking that machlokes either inside or on the outside of the animal. Tanya Rabbi Yishmael, says Rabbi Yishmael, Karu, we call this toich, which is it's like an onomatopoeia, that's the sound that it makes that it's cooking when the innards are inside, which is again a bit more of a bishul sound, as I think Gemara sometimes use it in reference to. But that's how Rabbi Yishmael refers to, where you put the innards inside the animal. Rav Tarvin Karu Kedim Mekulas, which we've had before, which means a helmeted goat coat, meaning because it looks like a helmet, because you have all those innards stuck on top of the animal. It looks like a helmet on top of the animal. Hopefully we can appreciate that better after seeing the pictures. Taner Rabbanan says, what is this helmeted coat? That even Bizman Hazeh you can't eat. Whenever you roast the whole thing at once, however, if you take off one limb or you boil one limb, then it's not a Gedima Kula. It's the concept of Gedima Kula. It's only if it really resembles it when you cook it 100% all together. Says Gemara, now that you told me if you cut off one limb, even though you roasted the entire thing, you told me it's not a problem. Nishlach mibai. Do you have to tell me if you boiled one limb? Meaning, if you boiled a limb, then the animal's not 100% roasted. So, of course, if you told me you have to cut off one limb, and even though you might have roasted, you just didn't do it all together, that's a mutter bizman hazeh. Certainly, if you boiled one of the limbs. No, the case is that you boiled it when it's attached to everything else. And therefore, that's the extra chiddush. Amar Rabba, says Rabba. A bit of a tangential Gemara now. Hi mul yaisa. Well, yaisa is when you have a roasted animal that's stuffed with raw meat. Sharia. So Rabbah says that is mutter. Says the Gemara, we'll see a Rashi in a moment, that's very important, but says, first let's see the Gemara. Amar le Abaye, says Abaye, Vaka bala dama. It absorbs the blood. So what's going on over here is, let's see Rashi Sharia, 4 lines from the bottom. Rashi says, you put raw meat inside of it. Even if you salted it, and this is the critical ingredient over here, you salted it the way that you would salt something that you roasted, meaning which is a lower level salting. Meaning, so we see over here the case is it's an issue with the malicha, with the salting. We know every food to eat it, every meat, you have to do malicha to get rid of the blood. So the problem here is they didn't do a full malicha on the raw meat inside the animal. So the question is, they only did a partial malicha, we'll call it, to make things simple. And then the question is, as they cook, so we worry that this inside, again, we have a whole animal with raw meat stuffed inside. So we worry that stuffing inside, since you didn't do a full salting of it, the blood is going to drip out and it's going to infect and make the whole animal treif. So Rabbah says, it's mutter. Asks Abaye, why is it mutter? Baladama. Amar le, Rabbah responds, famous words in all of Yardea. Here's a bit of a different context. Kiboloi kach paltai. Says Rabbah, just like the heating process causes the blood to come out, it also boloi to absorb kach paltai. It also causes it to be spit out, and therefore says Rabbah, there's no issue. Like the last Rashi in the Amud says, l'chutz v'shay v'chayim ha'ar, and the heat makes it get spit out. And therefore that is Rabbah's learning that the meat, the blood that comes off the raw meat is not an issue. Says the Gemara, let's bring you a raya of the Toichai, a raya from our Mishnah. What do we say according to the first opinion of Rabbi Yishmael? You take the innards and you put it inside the animal. My time, what's the reason? Meaning we cast the same question. Those innards, we have the same issue. As you're roasting it, what happens? The salt should come out of it and infect the whole carbon. We see that it's mutter. Must be Kabbalah Kach like Rabbah, that the same way it absorbs, it spits it out. The first kosher. Amri, the answer, shiny awesome. That's different. Why? Since you have this incision where they did the shchita, which is hollow, what's going to happen as we turn on to Ayin Dalet Mabez? Midav Dayiv. The blood is going to fall out of that area. Meaning we don't have to be worried with the blood infecting the whole carbon, because the incision area on the carbon is where the blood is going to fly out, and therefore that's why it's mutter. So maybe it's not a raya, to Rabbah's din of Kiboli Kach Poltei. Says Gemara, let's try again. I'll bring you a different raya. Halev, the heart. Karayu moitzi es damai. You rip it open, and the blood comes out. V'loi karai. If you don't rip open the heart and you cook it, you're allowed to cut it open and let the blood out after you cook it, mutter, and the heart will be permitted. Why is it mutter? My time is not because we have the same issue. Why don't we say that as you're cooking this heart, you're cooking it without removing the blood? So why don't we say as it cooks, the blood comes out and infects the entire meat of the heart? Says the Gemara, shiny lave, the Shia is because the lave is different because it becomes, because the heart is smooth, which I think we actually have a nice picture of the heart. First of all, here's again. Here we go. See, that the leaf is smooth. Therefore, says the Gemara, we're not afraid that the blood is going to collect there. Says the Gemara, is that Shuva Rabin Saba, Tafle, Ahi Bar Guzla, he breaded a certain young pigeon, Lirav for Rav, Amar Leni said to him, I Maili Tafle, Havli Vach. If it's Maili Tafle, what's Maili Tafle? So Rashi over here says, if it's Be'isa, if it's breaded well, if it's really breaded, then give it to me, I'm going to eat it. But if not, then not. So says the Gemara, you know what the reason is? The reason is because if it's fully breaded, then it's not going to have the blood issue on it, and that's the reason why it's going to be okay. Says Gemara, no, it's not a raya, bismida. It's with fine flour, which which is crumbly, and since it's crumbly, again, the blood is not going to collect there, and the blood is going to fly away, so it's not a question on our story. Says Gemara, a similar case, a goose meat, a pigeon meat, Amar, he said, whatever type of chicken. He said, if it's not white, like clear like glass, I'm not going to eat mine from it. And if you're going to tell me, like you keep on telling me that as you cook it, the blood comes out, but the blood flies away. Why do you have to say that it has to look clear like glass? Even if it's not clear, meaning it seemingly he was saying, if it's clear and I don't see the blood, I'll eat it. Sounds like, but if you see, then it's an issue. Says the Gemara, awesome. The reason is because we're talking about the white one, the sharer, which has a hard shell, and therefore it holds the blood in. The helchasa, what's the halacha? The smida, if it's fine flour, bein ismik, bein lo ismik sharia. Whether it seems red or not, it's going to be mutter, like we said, because the fine flour is crumbly and it pulls away the blood. The chiyurta, when it's going to be the white one, izig kizuza chiyura sharia. If it's going to be clear and white like glass, as mutter iloi aser. The shar kamachim, all other flowers, ismik aser lo ismik shari. Ismik from the word of red. If it's red, it's going to be forbidden. If not, it will be mutter. Again, trying to figure out as you cook it where the blood is going. I'm trying to figure out in which cases you have to be worried about the blood and which not. Says Gemara, Haimol Yisa man da aser afilu puma letachas. This molisa, this case that we're talking about, that the meat with the stuffing of the raw meat inside, those hold it's forbidden, is even afilu bepuma Litachas, even if the incision is downward, meaning even if we would think that the blood is going to run away, they hold that's still forbidden. Even when the incision is upward, they hold it's still mutter in this case. The halacha is mulisa is shari, it's mutter. Afilu puma la'el, even if the incision is upward, we're not concerned with the blood. Seemingly like the opinion of Rabbah that what kiboloi kach poltoi. Says the Gemara, umsa. Umsa is a type of partially raw meat. Is the testicles of the animal, umizriki, which are some of the arteries of the animal. Pligi Ravacha v'Ravina. They argue b'chol atar kula, Ravacha lechomra v'Ravina lekula, ve'elchas like Ravina lekula. We pass like Ravina. Lebar me'ani tlasai for these three places. The Ravacha lekula v'Ravina lechomra. Meaning these three places break the rule. Generally, Ravacha is a chomra, Ravina is a kula. And these three places, Ravacha is a kula, and Ravina is a chomra. And ve'elchas like Ravacha lekula. We pass like Ravacha. One of these three cases, and this is how we're going to conclude for today. Hai omsad is partially raw meat. The ismik chatche umalche. That what's going on? The ismik, it's very red. Chatche, and you cut it open. Umalche, and you salt it. Afilu l'kedera, even for a pot, like a cooking process. Shari is going to be mutter. Shavte b'shvuda, if you put it on a spit, you roast it on a spit. Shari, it's going to be mutter. Meidadai of why? Because we're going to say that the blood is going to flow away. But if you cook it on coals itself, like a barbecue, then pliba Ravacha Ravina. That's the case where Ravacha and Ravina are going to disagree. Chad Asar v'chad Shari. One says Asar, one says Mutter. Man Asar. Why? Mitzmat summits, because it's going to shrivel up, and therefore it's going to collect the blood inside. Therefore it's forbidden. Uman de Shari, the one that says Mutter Mishav Shayiv, the blood's going to flow away. V'chsa Mishav Shayiv, and the halacha is the blood is going to flow away. And it's going to be the exact same thing by the testicles and the arteries. The exact same discussion. Again, that when it's very red, you cut it up and you salt it, then it's always going to be mutter. When you put it on the spit, it's going to be mutter. When you put it on the coals, like as And we're going to pass in lekula because the blood flies away. V'chaybi, the case of the testicles, chatzchenu malchenu, you cut it up and you salt it. If you look at for a pat shari and it's mutter. Talena b'shfuda, you put on this spit shari and it's mutter. Made of dayav, why? Because the blood flies away. Achtenu agumri, if you put on the coals, pligi baramach ravina charas chachari mandasar mitzatzim zatzim. Why? Because it gets shrivels up and the shari mishav the blood flows away. V'chein mizraki, the arteries, chatzchenu malchi, you cut it open and you salt it. If you look at for a pat shari, it's mutter. Talia b'shfuda, you put on a spit. Beisa shchita, the place where you the incision is. Litatai, if the Misa Shchita is downward, Shari, it's mutter. Midav died because it flies out. Achte, Agomri, if you put on the coals, Pli Yeravach, Baravina, Charaz, Chachari, Mandasar, Matzv, Samitz, it's because the Shival's up, and the Shari, Mishav Shaiv, because the blood flies away, Ve'elchaza, Mishav Shaiv. We'll pick it up from over there. That's the lach in all these cases, is that even in the last case, we assume that the blood flies away. We'll pick it up from here tomorrow.